Titleist is the number one ball in golf. Yes, being number one is a number, and more players trust the Pro V1 or Pro V1X than all other golf balls combined. But being number one is more than a number. It's a mindset. It's a relentless mission to design and manufacture the best performing golf balls in the game, so you can chase whatever your number one is. Titleist, the number one ball in golf.
Hello and welcome to episode 132 of The Thing About Golf, the podcast series from Golf Australia magazine that tries to decipher the myriad reasons people come to love this game. Rod Murray doing the introductions, but John Huggan in the hot seat for this episode, where he travelled to St Andrews recently to catch up with one of England's best LPGA players turned broadcaster, Karen Stupples. Stupples stunned the golf world with her opening two holes at the 2004 Women's British Open at Sunningdale, when she started eagle-albatross on her way to a Sunday 64 and a 5-shot win. It was one of two LPGA victories in a career that in many ways was as unlikely as it has been successful. Stupples was far from a country club kid, growing up in humble circumstances in England, where her dad was a member at Prince's Golf Club. Opting for caddying over dishwashing to earn weekly pocket money, Stupples eventually started playing herself, and the rest, as they say, is history. It's a fascinating tale of chasing dreams, luck, timing, and the intangibles that make a world-class golfer. I hope you enjoy the discussion as much as I did.
Okay, welcome to the latest edition of the Thing About Golf podcast. My guest this time around is a rather wet Karen Stupples. She's just walked around the 18 holes of the Old Course in some terrible weather. But Karen Stupples, what was and is the thing about golf for you?
The thing about golf for me is that it's given me everything, in all fairness. It's given me a life that I could never have dreamed about growing up. It's given me lifelong friends. And it's given me an opportunity to pay back to some younger golfers so they have the same opportunities that I did. And it is an incredibly frustrating and fantastic game, but one that I owe everything to.
Take me back to the beginning then. How did it start?
So I was young, and as when you're young, you always want pocket money because you want to go and you want to start to buy some sweets or whatever you want, and you want to look for independence from your parents. So I asked for pocket money, and my dad said, "You don't get anywhere in life without working for it. So you can either help your mother with the washing up every night, or you can come and caddy for me." Right. Honestly, it's a no-brainer. I mean, why get stuck with your hands in a sink if you could tow a trolley around the golf course for a little bit? So I didn't go with the washing up. I went with the caddying, and I was always swishing away with a club. I was pretty sporty. I played netball, field hockey, any kind of athletic endeavour at school, running, jumping, whatever it was, I was doing it, throwing, and so I got to the point where I was swishing the club, and my dad said, "Well, would you like to try?" I'm like, "Yes, I'd love to give it a go." And next thing you know, he said, "I don't know enough about it, so I'm going to get you with they do a junior lesson on a Saturday."
Very sensible.
Yep. So off I went to the junior lesson, grip, stance, posture, all the basics, hitting balls. Yeah. After that first lesson, he said to me, "Well, now you've had a lesson, you've got to go practice." So he took me down to the driving range, and I was hitting balls. And whilst I was hitting balls, there was a lady called Joan Piper, who was a member of the Kent County Ladies Golf Association, and said, "Alan, you've got a daughter. She looks like she can swing a golf club pretty well. Let's get her in with the County Golf Association." And then from there, it just skyrocketed.
Yeah, your dad sounds like he knows what he was doing. For somebody that claimed to not know what he was doing.
I think he has always been very sensible about golf and achievement. He loved sport in general. He was a decent golfer, but I think he just generally understood that there were people that were better than him that could probably help me better than he could. Mm-hmm.
And what age were you when you started to beat him? It's always a big thing. It was with me. So.
It is. It took me a while before I actually got properly on the golf course. So I think I started at 11. I broke my arm, so that kind of set me back a little bit. Right. But I eventually got on the golf course when I was probably 13 proper, and then it was pretty quick. But my dad was a bit of a bandit, really? So so it took a while. But I think I was probably 14 when I first.
Sounds familiar. I was
Yeah.
the same. Yeah.
But it was always fun. We played mixed competitions together at Prince's, and we have our name up on the board together, which is always a really cool thing.
It doesn't sound like you were coming from a fairly advantaged background, if that's the way I can put it. Describe some of the things that, I know you've talked about this before, but describe some of the things that you had to do to get into golf and stay in golf and then progress in golf.
So, I mean, no, you're right. I mean, my mum and dad gave up a lot for me to play golf. My dad directed traffic around the Port of Dover, and at the time my mum was pressing blouses in a factory. And Prince's was fabulous because they gave free membership to juniors, so I could go and be a member and play golf.
Even if you were a girl?
Even as a girl.
Progressive at the time, I'm sure.
Well, absolutely. So Prince's were fabulous. Like they let me come in and play, and you had those junior lessons on a Saturday morning that were £1. So for £1, you had lessons. You got to hit balls, and then you got a can of Coke and a chocolate bar as well. So I mean, you had everything given. It was basically trying to encourage the youngsters to play. Dad and I would always go out looking for golf balls. Because obviously golf balls are a fairly decent expense. And so we would go looking around the long grass at Prince's, and we would find some good ones. Those would go in our playing bag. Then we'd find some not so good ones. Those would go in my practice ball bag. Yeah. So we would always do that. And then I had a paper round from the age of 13 that I was always kind of working towards, trying to do that. On your bike? On my bike. Yeah. I did that. And then as soon as I was old enough to get a job at 16, I was working. So I would do that. But for the most part, my mum and dad would save up. They would sacrifice things for themselves, and even for my sister, they would all sacrifice just so I could go and play tournaments. And even down to the food that they would have. We could eat sausage and mash for a week because it was cheaper, just so we could afford to go and do other things. And then,
how did your sister feel about this?
I think she used to steal my clothes, and I think she used to have. I think she was fine with it. She was trying to do gymnastics, and because we had such a loving upbringing and loving, mum and dad, I don't think either one of us ever felt that we were missing out on anything. And I don't remember feeling like, I wanted more. And then it became, for me, when you started to win amateur tournaments, you used to get vouchers for pro shop. Of course, yeah. And so the incentive for me was, well, if I can win vouchers, I can go and buy some nicer clubs, or I can go buy some more balls, or, and do that. But I never had a glove because I could never afford a golf glove. Really? And so I just would,
So I can play without one.
No, well, see, I never, I used to have as corded grips as I could possibly have just to stop them from being slippery in the wet weather. And, or new shoes or whatever it was. But the vouchers that I would win in those competitions would be spent on stuff that I would need for my golf. And so that was I think, a big part of why I became good was because those became a crucial part to me to continue to keep playing with some nicer things.
And at what point did it become clear that you were good? And at what point did you think to yourself, this is what I want to do? Because there's two different things.
It really is. So I think at 16 I knew I was fairly good because that was when I first got to play for England as a junior. And I thought, well, I'm one of the few people that gets to play for the England junior team. This is pretty good. Had no idea where that was going to lead or where it was going to go. I wasn't really exposed to professional golf. Didn't really know that there was too much of a women's tour even. And everybody had said to me, well, you could go on a golf scholarship. You could go out to America. You could, go to university over here. There are schools that you can do that with and then progress your career through that. Never particularly academic. Didn't ever really think it was something that I would be able to pursue. And so you play amateur golf, and then you make a transition from junior golf to senior golf, and all of a sudden you go from being a fairly big fish to being a very small fish when you make that transition. Yeah. And it was really difficult for me, that transition. And so
why?
Because I was at 17, and I was runner up in an English amateur championship. Didn't get picked for a senior team. And there was a lot of other players that were getting picked, and I just wasn't getting into it.
Amateur golf's rife with that nonsense.
Well, it is a little bit, but there was nobody to tell me that you're okay. Yeah. There was nobody because you place your worth and your value as a golfer on making those teams, because those are your stepping stones. That's the career path. Yeah. So it got to the point where I was trying to push too hard. I was trying to make something happen, and I got really fed up of that. So I thought, this is it. I'm getting out of here. I need to escape British golf. I need to go. And so I decided that America was the place. Mm-hmm. So off I went to university in America.
Now, how did that happen? How did you choose, or how did they find you?
So I went through an agency called College Prospects of America. And I was very lucky that Helen Wadsworth was a member of Deal. Also had become a member of Deal by this point.
I remember Helen.
Yep.
Hello, Helen, if you're out there.
Exactly. And she went to Wake Forest. And so within our area, everybody's like, well, you're as good as Helen. You could go to college in America. So I'm like, okay. So I made the decision. I joined an agency called College Prospects of America because I didn't know anything about it. I'd never been to America. Next thing you know, I've taken an SAT and I'm off to America. And my poor parents, I mean, what a leap of faith. I mean, they put me on a plane at Heathrow. Next thing you know, I'm in Memphis. It's just such a big, I don't know how they did it, because I can't imagine doing that with my
maybe
son
they wanted
now.
rid of you. Is that,
I wouldn't blame them, because I wasn't exactly great as a kid. But so off I went. But it was going to America that made me realize that there was a proper professional tour for women. I mean, I hadn't really seen much ladies European tour golf.
That sounds pretty naive.
It really was. Yeah, but I mean, don't forget, I mean, it was not on the TV. I mean, you're very much in your own little world. And then all of a sudden you get out to America and you're like, crikey, there's a huge tour. There's a whole, people are making money. And because, you watch it and you can see it, you're like, okay, this is something that potentially I might like to do. And so I enjoyed the life in America. I enjoyed everything that American college was giving me.
Now, we're talking Florida State here.
Well, I transferred. So I went to Arkansas State my freshman year.
Okay, right.
Transferred to Florida State after that. So it was really the Florida State that things started to flourish for me. I discovered that I can hit a flop shot. Took me a long time growing up on links. Yeah. And that I started to win bigger tournaments. My scoring average started to come down. And I started to realize that I really wanted to stay longer in America. I enjoyed the life there. I was quite happy. And
so what made the difference, or what made the biggest part of your progression? Was it the coaching, or was it the competition, or a bit of both?
It was not the coaching, because I would always maintain my coaches back here in the UK.
Right.
Essentially, for me, it was the fact that you had facilities. And it was the first time I didn't ever have to work, because I had a full scholarship.
Right.
And so I wasn't allowed to work.
Right.
So I was able to dedicate myself to practicing a whole lot more with fantastic facilities. And we would play more tournaments, and you would realize that stroke play events were kind of important. So rather than just things being based on match play and head to head, I was able to refocus and work on the stroke play side of things. And different shots, playing in trees. I mean, growing up on links golf course, all of a sudden you feel very claustrophobic if you've got a bunch of trees around you.
I know.
And so I would always struggle when I got on tree-line courses. But now I had to get over that. And I realized quickly that I hit the ball quite a long way. I was able to take advantage of it. And my game just progressed quickly because I didn't have to work. I was in class, from I think 9 a.m. till 12:30 in the afternoon. And the rest of the time was mine. Yeah. I mean, obviously you'd have structured practices and things, but I was very self-sufficient. I would spend hours upon hours upon hours just practicing. So the amount of time that I could put into my game, that's really what kind of kicked things off for me.
Yeah. Now, who were you playing with and against? Who were your contemporaries at that?
Trying to think. Kelly Keeney was going on there. Jill McGill just won the US Women's Championship. Yeah. She was around at that time.
Any famous teammates? No?
Janice Moody was over at San Jose. Kate Burton was on my team.
All right. She's now commentator.
She is. I mean, there was a lot of us around and about. But
I don't know if you know, I made a very brief visit to Florida State. The first half of 1980. I was there till I ran out of money. I caddied for Forrest Fessler in the Tallahassee Open at Killarn.
Oh, yes. That was one of the courses that we played.
That's right. And that was I got that enough money to get home with that. So
Otherwise, you'd have been stayed.
well, I don't know what I would have done, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I remember I got to, I flew to JFK.
Yeah.
And I had $200 in cash in my pocket. That was all I had.
Yeah.
And the standby fare on Pan Am to Heathrow was $199.
Oh, you just screwed.
So I wandered around JFK for 8 hours with $1 in my pocket. Yeah. So anyway, that's by the by. That's nothing to do with Karen
I was going to
Stupples.
say, it's opened up a whole bunch of questions I want to ask you now.
Yeah.
But...
Well, we can do that afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. But so anyway, so how did you progress and how well did you do in college?
So my first year was at Arkansas State and I was winning quite a few tournaments. Because it was a first year program, the standard of competition wasn't as high at that school. So I was, I could play very average and still do okay. But then I transferred to Florida State, had a couple of years there, and I think I won three events or so there, I can't really remember, but I was fairly good. Didn't win anything mega, but the progression was there. You could see my scoring average starting to come down, and just being in that environment of just golf all the time made me really realize that I could do it.
How do you feel about that? I mean, I have kind of misgivings about it. I think there should be somewhere for people to go who are really good amateur players to go and train to be professional golfers.
Yes.
I'm not quite sure that an academic institution is the appropriate place. How do you feel about that?
I think there are some people that are academically gifted enough to get by and for it to be easy enough. And there are other people that really struggle academically but are forced to have to go and do things like that in order to improve their golf. That was my situation. I'm not particularly gifted academically. I find passing exams very hard. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that I'm not clever. It just means that I just don't know what.
Well, there's a knack to passing exams.
And I definitely didn't have it. Mm. And but there are people that can breeze through college and not really have to stress about it and can get along fine. But I would love to see there be an avenue for other people to not have to worry about that. And I'm sure there are ways around it, but of course it costs money. And without having the money and backing and funding, how are you going to do it? If you're going to an American university and you got a full scholarship, they're paying for everything. Mm-hmm. So you have everything taken care of. It's not coming out of your pocket. Whereas if you are looking to train or work, you're having to fund that yourself, unless you have a sponsor that's willing to take a chance on a 16, 17-year-old kid. Yeah. There's no way of knowing if they are or not going to make it. Yeah. So that's where the difficulty comes.
Was it kind of the making of you then, it sounds like?
Absolutely was.
Yeah, as a player I'm talking.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and as a person too, I think, because, you're living independently of your parents. You're traveling across to another country. There's nobody there to pick up the pieces when things go wrong. Yeah. Like, you have to fend for yourself. You have to figure it out. You have to just get on with it. And I think that golf-wise, certainly, yes, no question. Opened up a lot of doors for me because of that. And playing on courses out there made me much more adaptable to when I finally did get my LPGA tour card.
Yeah, and you played Curtis Cup a couple of times, I think. Am I right?
I did.
Talk to me a bit about that and how much fun that was, especially if you're in America at the time. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of detached a little bit.
No question.
So sometimes you can get overlooked for these things.
So timing is everything with so many things. And I was getting to the point in my college career that I was running out of Patsy classes to take to keep my GPA.
What, the underwater basket weaving?
Yes.
Finger painting?
Yes. My coach would say to me, I need you to drop trigonometry and pick up basketball. Yeah. Just to keep me eligible, because I was all about the golf. I just wanted to play golf. Yeah. And so I'd done basically 3 years of college. And I had reached the very end academically of what I was capable of doing. So I said to my coach, I said, I'm going to have to leave now because there's nothing, I can't do anything else. But it came at a perfect time for me to come back to the UK to try and put myself in front of the selectors to make it much more obvious that I'm here. You can't forget about me. I want to make this team. Mm-hmm. And I even couched it as that to my coach. Say, look, I really want to make the Curtis Cup team. I kind of have to go back to make sure that I'm in front of everybody for this. And I came home and it all very fortunately worked out quite well.
And you played in a winning team.
I did.
As well, which is at that time was not the norm.
No, 96, but I had, Janice Moody, Barry Mackay were on my team. We had some really strong players and for whatever reason, we managed to to make it work against the likes of Christy Kerr and Kelly Keeney. Yeah. We had a good bond. We had great players, and it all kind of took off from there.
Yeah, I covered that. I was working for the Herald newspaper in Glasgow at the time, and I was there. And my lasting memory of it is, besides the fact that you guys won, was a member of the American team disappearing, basically, overnight, and turned out was off with her caddy. I won't name her for the sake of libel laws, but
I know who
we know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So that was my memory of Killarney 96. Yes. Yeah.
It was great. One of my favourite memories was all of us piling onto the back of a buggy or golf cart and just piling up the 18th fairway just in big celebrations because, we didn't know that we were going to win. We had hoped we were going to win, but then all of a sudden we did. And it's just so cool.
And how are you comparing at this point to the fellow members of the GBNI team? And at what point did you think, oh, I'm good enough to turn pro? I can play at that level.
It's
or were
hard.
you going to do it anyway?
I would have done it anyway. It was hard though because Janice Moody was obviously quite dominant, and you're still facing players. I never really did anything. I didn't win an English. I didn't win a British Championship. There were players that had done that you would have thought, well, they are going to go on and do more. Your Caroline Halls, your obviously Janice and Barry and Alison Roses, and players like that were winning more than I was and doing more than I was even at the amateur level. But I think the thing that really turned for me was those 36-hole tournaments. I started to win 36-hole tournaments. That you travel around the UK and dotted around you play in those little events, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I can put a good couple of scores together. It might not be those match play victories, but it's those stroke play events that I got all those experience for whilst I was out in America.
See, I could never be bothered playing in those things. It was too slow for me. I just couldn't face 2 rounds of 4.5 hours. Oh, I just couldn't do it.
But it was all the game. It's like it's like you're playing the game. The game is you go to these places because a lot of them were easier than Prince's or Royal Cinque Ports. So then your handicap comes down because you shoot low numbers. Plus you can win vouchers, which, as I've already said, were important to me for all manner of reasons. And so I think it was valuable experience as it turned out for that. But I never really saw myself as being one of the better players on the team. I just felt that I was incredibly lucky just to have an opportunity to be there. And that's how it was.
And were you still having to work part-time at that point to keep things going?
Absolutely. There was.
Tell me some of the things you had to do. I know you've said this before, but I'm always makes me smile.
So my least favourite of them all was working at a greasy spoon called the Happy Chef. And that was just...
What, your dishwasher?
The boss was not very pleasant there. Then I worked at another place as another cafe, and I used to make the desserts, but also had to do a lot of cleaning and stuff, and that wasn't very pleasant because cold baked beans are never very nice on a plate ever.
Even warm.
No, and then I would be a cleaner around the Port of Dover. So my dad got me a job as a cleaner. So that way I could work early in the morning, clean offices, and just be a cleaner. And so I would do all kinds of things just to make ends meet. But I then started to get old enough to do bar work, so I would work at a bar and at a pub on Sundays, but I would also work at a golf club just outside of Folkestone, Etching Hill, and bar work, waitressing, whatever I could do to make money.
And were you doing that even when you turned pro?
I was working.
Because you hear stories even now of girls having to do that.
So no, I was insanely lucky. Working at Etching Hill was the best move that I had ever done, because whilst I was there waiting tables, I used to have regular clients that would come in that had been off playing tennis but would come to the golf club for dinner. They used to sit at my table because the other waitresses didn't really, they didn't really want to deal with them because they were very particular, but they were particular in the right way. They were lovely people. They just wanted things done right. And I used to enjoy talking to them because they'd talk about my golf, and I'd ask them about their tennis and their golf. And, there was always something to talk about.
You could talk sport, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So one day I'm waiting tables, and a guy, his name's Keith Rawlings, says to me, "Why haven't you turned pro yet? I see your name in the paper all the time. You're winning these amateur events. You're playing well. It seems to me like you should be a professional." And I said, I'm working so I can save enough money to give it a go, because trying, even turning pro is expensive.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I just need to make money, because I'd taken enough from my parents. I couldn't ask for any more, and they didn't have any more to give. So to clean their main courses, brought the desserts over, and Keith said to me, I've been very lucky with my life. I feel like you deserve an opportunity. Write me a budget for what you need, and I'll give you the money to try.
Wow.
And so I was a bit taken back, and his wife, Sue, said, we mean it. We feel like you deserve an opportunity. And I was really floored that somebody would believe in me and give me a chance, like that just, it wasn't a small amount of money. It was, it was a lot of money. Yeah. And so I set up to like 2-3 in the morning, trying to figure out how much flights were, how much the entry fee was, all the stuff. And I put it down in a budget, went to Keith the next morning. I said, here you go. And thinking, he's never going to say yes. And he said, this is great. No problem at all. Happy to do this. There's just one thing. And I'm like, here's the catch. And the only catch he put on it was that I don't expect you to get your tour card first time. So I don't want you to have extra pressure. He said, we'll do this for 3 years.
Wow.
And I was very lucky. I got my tour card first time. And I had a fantastic career, all thanks to Keith and Sue.
Yeah. Where did you start in Europe? Forgive my ignorance.
No, I
straight to America.
Straight to America.
Yeah.
Straight to America.
I must admit, I had no memory of you playing in Europe, so that's obviously why. Yeah.
Well, I couldn't afford to do both. So I got a conditional card in America. So I had to do a lot of Monday qualifyings at first, and was on the and couldn't afford to go back and forth. It's
a brutal life, that, isn't it?
It is. It was very hard. And
are you driving around in a car just from Toronto? You're not flying, are you?
Well, you had to fly because a lot of you'd start in Florida, but I didn't get into the tournaments, didn't get into the qualifier. Flew out to Los Angeles, played in a tournament in Los Angeles, didn't get in there. Flew to Hawaii, Monday qualified in Hawaii. Actually got into the event. That was my first tournament. Didn't make the cut, so didn't make any money. So then you come back, and it was getting to the point where I'm running out of money, and I think I was down to my last $500, and I thought I can't possibly go and ask Keith for any more. I need to somehow try and make this work. And along the way, again, timing is everything. I was playing at a place called Onion Creek in Austin, and I was staying with some members of the course, which was lovely. And I got to play in a Monday Pro-Am, so I just earned I think it was $1,500 just for playing on Monday, which was fantastic. I had just made my first cut because of the pressure had been released, because I'd just made a little bit of money from doing that Pro-Am.
Now, everybody remembers their first check. What was it? Jack Nicklaus's was $33.33. How about that?
No, mine wasn't. Mine was barely $1,000. I think just about $1,000. Yes. So I didn't do very well, but I was just enough to make enough money. But that same week, I got an email from chief marketing guy from Blue Diamond Almonds. His name was Ian Erridge. Now, his wife Eileen went to school with my mum.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, he's not Jean. My mum's Eileen. So Jean. And so Jean went to school with my mum, Eileen, and Ian was the marketing guy. And he's like, we'd like to sponsor you. So next thing you know, I've got a sponsor, I've got Pro-Am money, and I've made the cut. And from that point on, it was...
Yeah, but see, that makes a difference, clearly. But what difference did it make? Was it take the pressure off? Did it make you play better? I mean, what difference did it make?
No, it didn't. It didn't make me... It meant that I could get to the next tournament, because otherwise I would have been out without money.
And you just progressed naturally then,
yes,
as a player, basically. Yeah.
It was strange because...
But that gave you the opportunity to do that.
It did. Yeah. But I still wasn't very successful. I was trugging along, playing in those Monday Pro-Ams, just trying to make a living. And then it got to be the summer, it was like August, September time. And Q school is looming again, because I'm not in, I'm thinking I'm going to have to go back to Q school. I'm like, I'm not sure that I could be lucky enough to get through it twice.
Is that the nightmare that people say?
It is. Yeah. It is. It's the thought of having your opportunity taken away and never getting back again, because you just don't know. It's the uncertainty of pro golf is just that. You just never know when it's going to be ripped from you. So I kind of said to myself, prepare for it. Everything you do from this point on, you're preparing to go through Q school again. And I will be at Q school, and I will be better prepared than I was before. I will be better than I was before, so that I don't have to be in this situation again. I will be ready for Q school. Mm-hmm. So I'm preparing.
See, that's easy to say.
It is. Yeah. It is. But because
it's a monumental, hurdle for most people.
Yeah. But it was the only way I knew how to cope with that I was going to go back. And just the fact that that I was preparing to go back freed me up in a tournament to have a top 10 finish.
Right.
I led my first tournament in Springfield, Illinois. I led after the first round. And I somehow managed to finish in 8th spot. I made $22,000. And I felt like I had won the lottery. I went and partied in New Orleans because I literally felt like I'd made it. Yeah. I totally made it. And from that point on, I'd made enough money the rest of the year to get non-exempt status, which meant that I was going to get in a lot more events than I'd played in the previous year. I had some kind of tour life to go to. My job was secure for another year, but I wanted more. I still wanted more. It still wasn't enough. I went back to Q school to get exempt, and I did.
And how far from being a Solheim Cup player were you at that point as a
miles.
player? Yeah.
I was miles away.
Describe your game then as compared to what it became.
So I still had a lot of links in me, low ball flights. I had a swing that was not very repeatable, that was prone to a hook. And I knew as soon as I knew that I needed to make changes. I'm like, I have to change this because this isn't going to keep me on tour. I wanted stability. I wanted to be better. So I found through Janice, I owe Janice quite a lot. I went to her golf coach, Chip Kolke, who was at the Faldo Golf Institute in Orlando at the time.
Yeah.
And we got a new set of clubs because apparently the ones I was using were not fit properly for me. And then we made all kinds of changes to my backswing and downswing. And it was a constant battle. But I had a swing that ended up being very repeatable, that produced a high ball flight, that sent the ball quite far. And that's really what made a difference. I started working with Chip. I started training with Annika's strength coach, Kai. And so I gained 20 yards in 8 weeks. It was ridiculous the amount of distance I gained just from learning how to use my body properly. And I started working with a psychologist as well. And so all things combined together, 2002 was really where everything started to kick off. 2003, I added the psychologist. Next thing you know, 2004, that was my breakthrough year.
Was that the year you won at Sunningdale?
It was, yeah.
Your golf ball is the most technologically advanced, or it's not. Your golf ball is either the most consistent, or it's not. It's the most trusted, or it's not. The fact is, it's either Titleist, the best performing golf ball in the world, or it's not. Prove it for yourself. Titleist, the #1 ball in golf. What will you play?
We have to talk about that. It's so ridiculous what you did. No one's ever done that, or before or since. But just for the record, tell people what you did and what it felt like when you were doing it.
So, 2004, I'd come off a really good result at Evian. I finished 4th, and I was really mad at myself for not winning at Evian, because if you win at Evian, you get to stay at the Royal Hotel, you get a nice car the following year, everything is all taken care of.
It's such a terrible golf course.
We're not going to go there.
Right, okay.
So then coming into Sunningdale, and I was in good form, and I knew I was playing well, but it was a course that I'd kind of had reservations about. I'd never really particularly played well there, But my coach has said to me, I really feel like you could do well this year. And of course, that's in the back of your mind. Like, well, my coach thinks I could do well. Maybe I can. So I get to the course on the first day, and there was a bit of a kerfuffle. I arrived late, so I didn't have my normal warm-up routine. Everything had to be a bit quick. And I had an afternoon time, and Julie Inkster was already 7 under par. And I'm like, no, I'm going to have to really go some today. And and if I want to win, I already had it in my mind that I wanted to win. I wasn't going there to not to win. I'm like, I'm going to have to really go some. So I rushed through it. I get out on the course, managed to shoot 7 under. Julie had dropped away at that point. And so I'm like, okay, was it 7 under? I can't remember now. It's all, and this is what's so funny. People ask me, what do you remember about it?
Yeah.
And so much of it is a blur, because I think it's that zone, isn't it? So that's what people, it's you're in the zone.
Yeah.
And I remember what I saw on TV. That's about the size of it.
Yeah, but to start, just in case people haven't heard of this before, you started eagle-albatross.
In the final round.
that, what was it like walking from the second green to the third tee?
I felt like I was going to make everything.
Yeah.
It was at no point did I ever feel nervous. When I stood on the first tee, I was one shot back, and I had the chance to win the British Open, and I wasn't nervous. I just knew I had it. Like I just knew whatever it was, I knew it. And there was no hope, there was no wish. I just knew it. Strike my tee shot, hit a good shot in, make the putt for eagle. Next hole, strike my tee shot, hit a 5-iron, goes in the hole. And I'm like, yes, that's great.
There should be a plaque there, shouldn't there?
It'd be nice. Yeah. I know exactly where it is to the blade of grass.
I'm sure you do, yeah.
And then from that point on, I just felt like I was going to make everything. Whether it was an approach shot, whether it was a putt, it didn't matter. I had a really sound game plan, and I just played golf. And it wasn't until I stood on the 15th tee that I started to get nervous. I stood there and I could see the finish line. And I'm like, oh, I really could do this.
Yeah, see, there's two sides of looking at it. Maybe this is my, Scottish Presbyterian upbringing, but if you do something like you just did, I'd be thinking to myself, oh God, if I don't win this now, people, that's all they're going to think is, why didn't you win it? After, that's how I would be thinking.
Yeah,
it's terrible. I know.
I thought I couldn't miss. Yeah. And I thought because I'd hold that shot, I thought, well, maybe this is my day, because whenever you watch...
Which is exactly what you should be thinking.
Yeah. Whenever you watch golf on TV or whenever you watch whatever, and I see it a lot now doing what I do, somebody always does something great. There's a chip in or a long putt or at a crucial moment or something. And you're like, that's it. Yeah. And I knew that was my moment. I think the fact that I had done that almost gave me the confidence and trust to just know that I had it. Again, even though I felt good about it and I just knew, that just, underlined it even more. Like, this is your day. This is your day. Nothing can go wrong. This is your day.
Yeah. Did you manage to take that into the Solheim Cup? I mean, how was your Solheim Cup experiences?
No.
It's a different thing, isn't it?
It's very different. And I think it's taken me a long time to realise why. And I'm not that person that wants to stand on your throat and be cutthroat about it. I'm just not built that way. I am, however, very good at making birdies, and I could do that a lot. Yeah. And that's why I was picked, was because I can make a lot of birdies.
You're great in 4 balls, yeah.
Well, but if only I had realised what I needed to do. And what I need to do was say to myself, I'm going to go and make 5 to 8 birdies today, and you're going to have to play really well to beat me, as opposed to trying to be something I'm not, which is I felt like I needed to be, an Ian Poulter or a Graham McDowell that loved the niggle, that loved the fight, that wanted to step on your throat. Yeah. That's not in me. I can't be that. Now, but I needed to be true to myself, and I wasn't.
Take me inside the team rooms. I mean, I'm more familiar because of what I do for a living than with Ryder Cups than I am with Solheim Cups, although I've been to a few. And the Ryder Cup European team, they do a great job of giving a, all for one, we're on this together, image. It's only afterwards that you hear behind the scenes what exactly has been going on. Is it like that in, with 12, trying to control 12 women? Is it as hard as trying to control 12 men, or is it the same thing?
I think it's
just golfers.
I think it's golfers. Yeah. I don't think whether it's men or women, it really doesn't matter. The reason that people are in golf in the first place is because they like their own company. They want to be in control of the ball. They want to control their own destiny, which is, one of those cliche things you say. But they want the ball, and that's why they're there, because they're very good at doing that. The goal of the captain is to try and rally everybody around.
Yeah. It seems to me, looking at it from a distance, obviously, and I've been in teams as amateur teams, the captaincy is a very easy thing to get wrong.
Yep.
And a hard thing to get right. Is that your experience?
I think so.
And can you give me some examples of both?
Well, for me, I mean, I've been very lucky.
You don't have to name names.
But no. I've been lucky. I mean, it's like everybody has their own style and their own way of doing things. But I can tell you that communication is key, and how you communicate and how you talk to the players, how you see them. Like you can't be insular in your own world. Mm-hmm. Because you have to understand and see everybody else. And I think,
so you have to be a different person to an extent. I mean, everybody talks about Seve was legendary in a Ryder Cup team room. He was way different from what he was normally. He wouldn't give you the time of day normally, but he could do anything for you in the team. That's a difficult thing to do, I would imagine.
It is. But again, you're putting your own personal wants aside for
Yes,
bigger
yeah,
one,
yeah,
which
but
is
that's
which
hard,
is a
that's
team.
the hard part.
But it's knowing what to do with it. I would say that the best experience I've ever experienced and witnessed firsthand was Katrina Matthew. Now, I didn't play on the same team as she did, but I was a helper for her. And also I was an assistant captain with her for the Curtis Cup. What Katrina does insanely well is she's observant. She watches the players. She watches how they interact with each other. She knows how to pair them up from watching them and how they're interacting and their game styles and what they do. Yeah. But not only that, she knows how to talk to the players. She knows what to say to them if she has to sit them. She knows what to say to them if she needs them to play 5. She knows how to communicate in such a way that it makes that player feel like they're special and brilliant. And I think that's the key to the whole thing, because it makes you feel like you're all as one and you have a purpose and a goal within the team environment, as opposed to, we just need you to go and get your point. There's way more to it than that. And Katrina is as good as I've ever seen.
I know her well, as you know. I mean, she's, I've always thought she's got the perfect temperament for golf. Yep. And she managed to transfer that into being the great captain that she was. I mean, but that's not easy either.
No, it's not. But I think, the calmness that you see from her as a golfer, that translates into the captaincy. And it's just, honestly, it was a marvel to watch. I mean, I can't say enough.
Can you give me an example of a moment where you thought, man, that was inspired, or, that really made a difference? I know it's not easy off the top of your head.
No, I mean, I'm just trying, like, even little things like, well, even though you're not playing the first session, I need you to lead the second session. Just how you phrase it, how you put it out there is
everything's
key.
a positive, or should be.
Exactly. And even the lineup, where we're going to put people in the lineup, all the way down to if you're at the bottom of the lineup, you better be very comfortable with being lonely, because as the day goes on, it gets more lonely on that driving range as everybody goes off ahead of you. So you stack your pairings accordingly. Who's going to be happy being in that last spot on their own? And how do we give them the support they need when they're there? Yeah. Things like that make a huge difference with what she does.
What's the best bit of advice you've done or you've given in your blow your own trumpet for a minute? In that environment, I mean, Beanie's always told me that she's always been listening. She listens to what everyone says, but she makes the decision.
Yeah, she does.
I mean, what have you said to her in moments where she's been listening?
Well, I think that was a good bit there about being that last player, because I've always been that last player, so I can lean on experience. Like, well, this is how it felt for me in that spot. I think my biggest bit of advice was talking to the caddies, getting the caddies all on board, getting them as part of the team, making them feel like this is, they're helping these players to achieve and to succeed. So if you can do these things, this is going to be really important. So I think that was probably my biggest input. It was probably that.
Now, you've been involved in Solheim Cup and now Curtis Cup earlier this year. What's the difference dealing with different? I mean, you're talking about a different level of player.
I think that
there might be one or two in the Curtis Cup team that are going to go ahead and play Solheim Cup, but they won't all reach anything like that level.
No, not at all.
So you've got to talk to them slightly differently, I would imagine.
I think there is professional golf, there's a jaded side to it already. Like, it's a commercial enterprise. Everybody is out there, has been professional for a while. They're all making living. They all know what to do on their own. Like, they all have their own little way of doing things. It's all, and so they'll go about their business as that. When you have Curtis Cup, there are a group of players that have a ton of talent, and it's just a question of trying to get them to believe that. And so the pros are going to believe it because they're doing it. But the amateurs will think that they believe it, but they're kind of hoping at the same time. But it's getting them to full on believe. But the difference between professional golf and amateur golf is closing quickly. The quality of play that I witnessed at the Curtis Cup was outrageously good on both sides. Yeah. The shots that they played, the putts that they made, the chip-ins, the whatever it was, they just rose to the occasion when they needed to.
Well, you're right. I mean, Lottie Ward, to use the top example in the GBNI team, she was the best player in that team this year.
Yep.
And she's already competitive at professional level.
No question.
I mean, no doubt.
Absolutely. And so you can see that the difference is like nothing like it used to be. Like when I played in the Curtis Cup, I had a whole massive long way to go before I was ever going to be ready to be a professional. Yeah. But all these players, I mean, all of them have an opportunity depending on how much they work, how much they believe in themselves. And most of it is about that belief in themselves.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. I mean, I've seen enough of it from both sides. I've been played decent amateur golf to watching it as a journalist. And it's weird how some guys are better amateurs than they are pros and vice versa. Mm-hmm. Guys that you thought just pretty good players as amateurs make it as pros, and guys who thought, well, he can't miss. Yep. They do miss. Yeah. I don't get it. There's an X factor in there somewhere, isn't there?
There is. And I don't know really what it is. I think if I look at my own way, because I was probably one of those players that maybe people would have thought, I wasn't that must
you weren't
make.
the best player on the team.
No, by far. And I think for me, I am so stubborn. I am so hard-headed, and I never take no for an answer. And I remember one time my dad, he put a sticker on my door that said, I never let good advice get in the way of what I want to do. Because if I want to do it, I'm going to go right ahead and make it happen. Push the door open, kick it in, do whatever I can to make something out of nothing. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what happened. I was just too stubborn and hard-headed to believe that I wasn't going to make it. I always felt like I'm going to make it happen. And I never thought of failure. Yeah. I always felt like, how do I make it work? How do I make it happen? I never once thought of what would happen if I didn't.
I don't want to skip over your career before we get into the broadcasting side of things, but if you can briefly summarise how it came to an end and why did you stop, and how did it evolve into what you do now?
It's very simple. I had my son Logan in 2007, and he's probably the best thing I've ever done in life, is managed to raise him.
This is the 6'3" baseball
That's
player.
The one, the big one. And I hit the kid jackpot with him. I'm pretty lucky. And so I got a chance to work for the BBC at...
People work for the BBC?
I did. I actually
worked. Hope Ian Carter listens to this.
Yes, well, it was with Ian Carter's group for Radio 5 Live. Okay. And it was at Carnoustie. And I remember being out there. I just had Logan and working for 5 Live. I'm like, this is fun. This is tremendous. So I was fortunate enough to keep getting asked back. Well, as Logan got older and he was travelling with me.
Did that affect your career, having the kid?
No doubt. I mean, no question, because obviously you're not sleeping anymore. You don't get to practice as much as you want to. It became more difficult. And especially when he started school, because he wasn't travelling with me anymore. So I would go off to tournaments, not see him. I would come home, but I would still have to practice and work at my golf game and then not see him then. And it was very hard on me, and I really missed him. And it just broke me up, not being able to give my son what he needed, which was his mum. So I started looking for alternatives, like, what can I do? What can I do? How can I get out of playing tournament golf? But of course I needed to still make money. And I was very fortunate that around 2013, I started to do a little bit of work for Golf Channel. And then that rolled over into 2014, working for them full time. Pretty much.
How did that start? I mean, did they approach you? I mean, they're not going to know that you're...
No, but I think now I'm in the industry, I know that they kind of earmark certain people because how they interact and how they react with media. Right. I'm always very engaged. I was always very engaging as a player, hopefully. I mean, you can attest if I was or wasn't. Well, that's another subject. But I would always like to chat. I'm always very chatty, and I think they always had me kind of earmarked as potential. And so I knew the producer for Golf Channel, Beth Hutter, at the time. And I said to her one day, I said, is there any chance I could tag along just to see if this is something I could do? Put a headset on, just listen, because TV is very different from radio. And so I put a headset on, and we're doing a playoff, and I knew what I would have said if it had been me. And I was spot on, and I thought, oh, maybe this is something I could do. So every opportunity I had, I'd put a headset on and listen. I'd go hang around in the trucks. I would watch what they did. I would do all manner of different things. And then I was at the Solheim Cup in Colorado, and I was working for BBC, and there was a producer for Golf Channel, for Golf Central. And she said, is there any chance you could come on and do a hit for us for morning drive? Because all of their guys were out ready for the action. Yeah. So I said, yeah, sure, why not? So it took a bit for her to persuade her boss to let me on, but she did. And her name's Lena Bustos. So thanks, Lena. And apparently I did fairly well. And next thing you know, I'm now really firmly on their radar. I then asked the live tournament producer, Beth, again, is there a chance I could get back out and follow another group? And she said, actually, we could do with a third on course. Do you want to put a pack on and give it a go? I'm like, perfect. I'd love it. Put the pack on, went out.
That's what you'd be most suited to at that point.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I put the pack on, went out, followed a group, and apparently that was my audition. And I passed, and I got asked to do more.
Now, people ask me about this, but broadcasting and journalism are two very different things. I don't get to say absolutely whatever I want to say, but I do get closer to the line, I think, than broadcasters are able to do. Where is the line for a broadcaster like you? Do you just instinctively know where it is, or because you can be too honest and lose your job? That's the irony of it.
Of course.
Yeah.
For me, if I'm talking about players, if I'm talking about people when they're actually in the ropes, doing what they do, I have to be honest about what I'm seeing, but I'm honest to a point of if it's fair. If it's a fair comment, that if somebody had talked about me, how would I have taken it? So I always use myself as a barometer. And it happens in a split second for me. Like is this fair? Is this not fair? I mean, it's like a blink of the eye, and then you can go ahead and say what you want. And there's a gut reaction to it.
Yeah, but I mean, and 99 times out of 100, you'll be on the right side of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you do what I do for a living, I've got people who don't talk to me because of what I've written. And that's part of my job. I mean, and I would argue that you can't do what I do and not piss people off now and again.
No, because that's your integrity, though.
But you can't go that far.
No. But that's the filter.
And it doesn't bother me.
No,
it would make a difference to you, I think, or any broadcaster.
But I think that's, for me, I generally like to be liked anyway. That's just who I am. I like people to like me. So I'm not going to push the envelope too much. But I also know that people aren't going to take me seriously if I'm not honest. Yeah. And I'm never going to be good at my job if I don't say a bad shot's a bad shot, if a good shot, because then how are they ever going to know that it's a good shot? Yeah. If everything's a good shot. So you just have to be honest about what you see. And if at the end of the day, I can say I was absolutely 100% honest with that, and I believe with my heart that what I said was correct, then what else is there?
But you must have upset somebody.
I have.
I'm digging for this.
I have.
Go on.
I upset Suzanne Pedersen. It was the concession, non-concession.
In my experience, that's not that hard to do, by the way. But anyway,
she was my friend. She was. We are friends, but she was a friend at the time because we were pretty close playing. But I was asked to comment on the concession, non-concession, and and I had to find her and seek her out afterwards.
This is in the Germany thing in the Solheim Cup.
Yeah, so I had to then seek her.
Just for people who don't know, the American girl dragged the ball back without. And being technically being conceded, yeah.
Right, you said. I hadn't given it to you.
Yeah.
And it was just a big kerfuffle and everything. And, and in the heat of the moment, of course you're going to say, I didn't concede. And she was right.
I was on her side on that.
Of course. No.
And they ended up making her apologise for nothing. I thought.
Of course.
Yeah.
But in the end, I ended up seeking her out and saying, look, I don't want to hurt, it's never meant to hurt you. And she's like, well, but it's all good. It's all been patched up. But I think, again, in situations like that for me, and David Ledbetter had a go at me one time too. But in those situations, I feel like I have to face on. Like I said these things because it's what I believed at the time. And I do what I do because I'm supposed to have an opinion. And so that happens. But I've remained fairly unscathed so far. But again, I'm a bit of a soft touch. So
we'll see. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
What do you see in women's golf? I mean, I'm a big fan of the women's game more and more because of the way the men's game has gone. I mean, we're sitting here at St Andrews.
Yep.
And the old course is fast becoming almost obsolete for the men. But the women were here in August.
Yep.
We were both here watching that. And I thought it was tremendous. I mean,
Absolutely.
Lydia Ko played the golf course in the way that you're supposed to play this golf course.
Yep.
And the men don't anymore. No. It's a drive and a kick on most holes for them now. And the pin positions in the Open are getting ludicrous.
Yeah, well, you can't put them in hard enough spots. No. And you're so reliant on the weather.
Yeah.
If you have tough weather conditions, the old course will stand up and bite back.
But the point I was getting to is how good are the women now compared with 10 years ago?
Oh, it's so funny because the only way I can really describe it is that I took time off to have a baby. I took 7-8 months off, had a baby, came back, and it was like the whole world had changed on tour in 7 months. The turnover of players, all of a sudden everybody seems to be longer. I went from being one of the longest to now I'm kind of like just above average. And I'm like, this has happened in less than a year? What's going on? So in the course of 10 years, the depth, the athleticism, the skill set is completely changing. Even from coaching, the way the women are coached now is different. They're not coached as women. They're coached as golfers. You've got proper instructors. Off the top of my head, a guy called Gareth Raflewski, Canadian guy, taught a number of players, primarily short game. But he coaches them the same, whether it's a guy or a girl. Doesn't matter. He teaches them how to spin the ball, how to hit those little hooky chips or those little slicey chips. No one would have taught that to a woman 20 years ago. Because, there were so many stereotypes that you had to overcome. Like, well, they're not strong enough to do it, or all of this rubbish. And if only people could see the faces I'm making when I'm talking like this. But so the women are now coached better. They're coached to the same degree with the intention of creating imagination and creativity and knowing that they're getting stronger and longer. A lot of the times the women play courses that handcuff the longer players. They're having to hit short stuff off the tee.
Laura Davis says that a lot, yeah.
And it drives me nuts because the courses are designed to protect against the men hitting at a country mile. So all the trouble comes in at a certain spot. So you cannot set up a course adequately for the longer female player. So it just, there's a frustration factor there, I think, still. The design of golf courses is holding back the development of the women's game to a certain extent, because if it got to a point where you could have women full on opening their shoulders, hit and drive everywhere they wanted to, it would be a different set of leaderboards week in, week out. You would have the longer, more athletic players constantly at the top of the leaderboard.
No, I'm not sure that's the best thing, though. I mean, the in the men's game,
but it's more exciting. So, but if you look at you want your longer, more athletic players achieving because
I'm not arguing that there shouldn't be an advantage in somebody being able to hit the ball further than X hits it further than Y. X should have an advantage. My argument is that in the men's game, it's become so out of proportion.
Yes.
That advantage. And it's almost a prerequisite now.
Yeah.
You cannot have a Luke Donald, the Luke Donald who got to number one in the world. You can't play like that anymore and be number one in the world.
I would agree with that.
And I think that diminishes the game.
Yeah. But it also, I think, from the women's perspective, it has the potential to limit the growth of the women's game and the appeal of watching women's golf on television or in person if you're restricting the longer hitters to never hitting drivers.
That's not a good thing.
So everybody's hitting to the same spot, everybody's going in, and you have average winning. Now, average is okay, and it's good. It's horses for courses. They should be given every opportunity too. But I do feel like longer players should have a little something from time to time where they get given an advantage.
Yeah, there should be an advantage, yeah. I mean, now, feel free to disagree with this if you like, but it's long been my impression, and I've written about this and been criticised for it because it was taken as sexist or misogynistic or whatever. The women, even now, generally speaking, there are exceptions, but the women don't putt as well as the men do. And I've kind of wrestled with that for a while, and I think it's probably the speed of the greens is maybe more consistent on the men's tour. I'm making things up, you know.
I was going to say, do you have factual figures to back that up?
And I'm trying to come up with reasons.
So why do you perceive that? Why is that your perception?
The men it's statistically correct that the men do average, generally speaking, lower average putting than the women do. And I can't think of any good reason for that.
I want to pull out my phone right now and double check that.
It's been true for a long time.
In what regards? Shorter putts, longer putts? They make
Just
longer
putting
putts?
in general, yeah. I mean,
I'd
have to go back and read what I wrote.
I was going to say, I would need to look at the numbers before I could
but
properly. But I feel like I want to argue with you on that.
You feel free,
I mean, I think about, when I look through the numbers and the facts and figures, and you've got players over the course of the year, and on the putts per green in regulation stats, so they've hit the green, they have an opportunity for a birdie, they're going to make, what is it, about anything from 1.5 to 1.7 putts per green in regulation is pretty good. Anything over that is a bit,
Mm-hmm.
And from looking at the men, it's normally, I don't think I've seen it too different to that. So the top percentages are the same.
Mm-hmm.
You might be thinking the depth might not be the same, but then that's the depth in general.
Yeah.
The depth of men's golf is it's still much deeper than women's golf. But that's not to say that the top 20 aren't going to be as good. And I still think you can compare the top 20 with the top 20 putting wise. But if you want to talk about greens, I think we're moving away from this now. I think the quality of course preparation for LPGA Tour golf is vastly superior now to what it was 20, 30 years ago. We're playing better courses, even at the ones where we play the majors now.
Yeah.
Much better quality of course. And so you're able to get more consistency across the board. And the Tour does a better job in trying to keep the green speeds more consistent
maybe it's becoming less and less because, as you just say, maybe it's an agronomy thing that the greens are just better or closer to or basically the same on the women's tour as the men's tour. And it wasn't the case when I wrote that story a good 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that's probably one of the reasons you're seeing the change. 10 years ago, the women's golf is exponentially different now to what it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. How do you feel about I ask everybody this, and probably the people who listen to this podcast are tired of me asking, but I'll have to ask everybody, what do you think of what's going on in the world of golf right now, especially the men's game? I mean, the women are, kind of separate from it a little bit, but what do you think from looking at it?
It was inevitable, I think, that something like this was going to happen. I think the PGA Tour have had it pretty good.
I think it's an opportunity.
So, I mean, I'm lucky. Like I can keep somewhat removed from having to really think long and hard about it. I do like the idea of different types of golf. I'm not adverse to that. Having a team aspect to golf, I'm not adverse to that. I like the thought of golf being quicker and being over and done with. I think that's kind of good.
It's becoming unwatchable live.
It's hard.
For me.
Because it just takes a long time. And I think that kind of is appealing. I like different formats. I think trying to encourage a younger viewership, I think, is very good for golf, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to move into, continue viewing golf as they get older. I would wish everybody would come together.
Sorry, do you have a problem with the source of the money?
The source of the money.
I mean, there are people who work for the Golf Channel, your colleagues, who are one or two in particular, who have a big problem with that.
Oh, I know. And obviously I'm very close to it because Jerry obviously is on the broadcast.
Yeah.
So...
this is your partner, Jerry
Yes, he
Fox.
is.
Yes,
yeah. So I obviously am very torn on that. I would say no, I don't. I think everybody wants to make a living, and having come from a position of not having very much growing up, I understand the value of money in general and how important it is and can be game changing under certain circumstances and situations. I think everybody now is making a ton of money. It doesn't matter where it comes from.
It's easy to take the pragmatic approach to this because the world deals with Saudi Arabia business-wise in almost every facet of life. But there is no way that anyone can approve of what goes on there. I mean, the human rights aspect of it is just undeniable. But there is the other side of it, the business side of it. If you look at it purely in the business sense, you have to look past that in a way. The one thing I do think, and it always intrigued me, why the Saudis just didn't buy women's golf. If they came along to the LPGA and said, we're going to do this, the LPGA would have to go along with it, because if they didn't, the Saudis would just buy the players. and the LPGA would then cease to exist. So they're kind of caught, I think, or could be, if the Saudis took that approach. And I don't know why they don't do that, because it would be a great PR thing for them.
Well, and the same thing, I mean, throwing this question right back at you, what about the DP World Tour?
Well, I know. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where do you end?
They could have done that with them.
They go to China, they go to,
it is what it is. And famous Tiger words, it is what it is. But I think everybody's looking to sustain the tours, to keep things ticking over, to keep the flow of money, to keep their livelihoods, to keep everything moving. And I don't know, like I just think that in women's golf in particular, we're so used to not having anything and just keeping the lights on. If you look at the LPGA, they don't have the fancy stuff. We don't have the shot links. We don't have all those fancy whistles and bells that men's golf has. And so you're just trying to keep the lights on. And I think for the most part, keeping the lights on is what a lot of people are trying to do. So it's very hard for me to comment on that, on the financial side of things, because it's never been offered to me or been part of me.
And I tell you what's noticeable.
And Jerry makes his decision for him. Like, I don't have any part of that. I mean, and I'm very proud of him for what he's done, because ultimately his decision has allowed me to grow and to get bigger within my role within NBC and Golf Channel, because I've, grown into that spot, into the spot that he used to have. So for me personally, I've benefited. No question about it. So,
yeah, I mean, women,
and I'm glad of that.
There's a lot more women in broadcasting now, in golf, certainly. So, which is no bad thing. So,
yep, no question.
Yeah, where do you think we'll be 10 years from now, though?
Well, hopefully we'll have. Well, how men's golf is, I don't know, and how women's golf is. I mean, I'm not on any boards anymore. I don't have a say in any of this stuff. I hope we have a uniform golfing world where everybody gets along and we have fantastic tournaments, and golf in general has improved in popularity and people can really buy into the excitement of golf. And I really hope that pace of play is quicker. I hope that people can move around the golf course in a much more expedient fashion than they do right now. I would like to see women's golf valued a lot more than it is right now. And and collaborations between men and women. I'd like to see more of that from 10 years from now. What else would I like to see? There's a big wish list of things that I would like, but those are pretty standard ones. Just, I want to see golf popular. I want to see people have availability for golf too. I'd like to see it more open for people to pick up. I was very lucky. We didn't have anything, and yet I still play golf. I would like to see that across the board for everybody. Yeah,
I worry about that. I mean, some of the top courses, the green fees that I'm reading are just becoming extraordinary. I mean, they're 4 figures for a round of golf.
Well, and that's, I mean, how do you ever get into golf?
Yeah.
And I marvel at how in the world I even started, because, I just managed to break the mold. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'd like for all these things to happen.
Yeah. And you seem quite happy with the way things are going then. I mean, we're heading in the right direction, are we?
It's very easy to look at it from my personal little slice of the pie. Bear in mind, I'm a past golfer myself who has an insanely selfish attitude to a lot of things. Mm-hmm. If everything's all right in my world, then everything's all right. And everything's all right in my world. That being said, I'd like it to happen quicker. All those things that I wanted to happen that I've just mentioned, I'd like to happen quicker. I'd like it to be open to more people quicker. I'd like unification quicker. I'd like everybody to be getting along quicker. All of that is things that I can't control or have no input in at all whatsoever. All that I can try and do is be kind to people, hope that my interactions with people leave them in a positive space. And so that at the end of the day, I can say, well, I did my little bit, whatever that may be, whether it's helping the LPGA Tour to grow from how I talk about them, to encouraging the young girls that follow the LPGA Tour to keep going with the golf, to keep persevering, to overcome obstacles or hurdles that are in their ways. And so maybe, little things like that, I can make a difference. But in the big scheme of things, these are things that I have no input in. So we'll see how it goes.
That's a pretty powerful message, and the perfect way to finish. I'm looking at the time, and we've talked long enough. I think I've kept you away from your next meal long enough. Karen Stupples, thank you very much for your time.
You're more than welcome, John. Thank you.
Well, there's any number of ways that a golf career can unfold, but I'm sure you'll agree that Karen Stupples' story is one of the more interesting and heartwarming. Well, that's it for episode 132 and indeed for 2024 as we take a break from the thing about golf until the new year. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and indeed all our episodes from the year, and we're already looking forward to continuing the journey in 2025.